On the last day of June 1956, two airliners left Los Angeles 3 minutes apart, a TWA Super Constellation and a United DC-7, both bound east, both climbing into an uncontrolled sky, because in 1956 the United States did not track commercial flights across most of the country. Somewhere over northern Arizona, both captains did what captains did in that era. They detoured to give their passengers a better view of the Grand Canyon. At 10:30 in the morning, at 21,000 feet, in a gap between towering clouds, the two aircraft found the same piece of sky. The collision tore them apart above the gorge, and the wreckage and all 128 people aboard fell into the canyon near the junction of the Colorado and Little Colorado rivers, onto two isolated buttes so inaccessible that recovery crews had to be lowered by Swiss mountaineers and helicopters. It was, at the time, the deadliest commercial air disaster in American history, and the outrage it produced led directly 2 years later to the creation of the Federal Aviation Administration and the modern air traffic control system. Every controlled flight you have ever taken descends, in part, from that morning over the canyon. And here is the fact that reframes everything you think you know about this place. Those 128 people belong to the largest single category of Grand Canyon deaths. Not falls, not the abyss everyone edges away from at the railing. Aircraft. Roughly 900 people have died in and around the Grand Canyon since record-keeping began in the 19th century, and the way they actually died is almost perfectly misaligned with the way visitors fear dying, and that misalignment, the gap between the danger you feel and the danger that exists, is itself the canyon's deadliest feature. That is what we are talking about today. The ledger exists because two men spent decades compiling it, Michael Giglieri, a longtime Colorado River guide, and Thomas Myers, who has served as the park's physician for more than 3 decades, and their book, Over the Edge, Death in Grand Canyon, is the definitive account, painstaking, unsensational, and built around one repeated observation that Giglieri has stated flatly in interviews. Virtually every single one of these fatal events was preventable. Read the whole ledger and the categories sort themselves with brutal clarity. Air crashes, some 275 deaths or more, counting decades of tour planes and helicopters that fell into the gorge chasing views, including a 1986 mid-air collision between a sightseeing plane and a helicopter that killed 25, and finally forced strict flight corridors over the park. Since then, the sky has gone mostly quiet, with the 2018 crash of a tour helicopter on the West Rim killing 5 British tourists and their pilot, standing as the grim modern exception. Then the environmental deaths, heat above all, roughly a quarter of the ground level total. Then drownings in the Colorado River and its side creeks. Then the falls, and inside the falls category hides the single most misunderstood number in the entire park. Because of the roughly 900 dead, the number of people who have accidentally fallen from the rim, the death every visitor imagines, the one that makes your palms sweat at Mather Point, is about 55 to 64, depending on how you count the century. Do the math against 5 million visitors a year, and the odds of dying in a rim fall work out to roughly 1 in 1.8 million, which makes standing at the Grand Canyon's edge statistically safer than the drive most people took to get there. The first recorded rim fall tells you nearly everything about the ones that followed. In 1925, a Colorado man named Lewis Thompson stepped back to take a photograph, tripped, and fell 700 feet. A camera was involved at the beginning, and a camera is involved still. In the smartphone era, rangers watch a daily ballet of people climbing past railings, backing toward the void, framing themselves against eternity, and in one 7-day stretch of a recent summer, 3 people went over the edge in falls, one of them a base jump gone wrong, a cluster that startled even the park's veteran staff. But the falls that kill in real numbers happen below the rim, in the inner canyon, and they take a very specific person, young, male, fit, alone, and improvising. Giglieri and Myers found the pattern so consistent it reads like a formula. The solo hiker leaving the established trail to shortcut a switchback, the scrambler on a ledge at dusk, and, in a detail the authors document with a physician's unblinking honesty, a recurring number of men who fell at night, from heights, while urinating off the edge of something, dizzy, sometimes drunk, always sure. Shortcutting, the book concludes, is the mother of all hiking errors. The canyon does not punish it every time. It only has to collect occasionally to stay solvent. Now to the killer that owns the modern era. The one with no cliff and no drama. Only sunlight. The Grand Canyon inverts every instinct the human body has about mountains, because the climb comes last. On a mountain, you do the brutal work first, fresh, and if it breaks you, you turn around and descend to safety. In the canyon, the descent comes first. Easy, cool in the morning, seductively fast, 7 miles down Bright Angel or South Kaibab to the river, feeling like a pleasant stroll, and the whole time you are banking a debt. Nearly a vertical mile of climbing that must be repaid in the afternoon, in an inner gorge where summer temperatures run 20 to 30 degrees hotter than the rim and routinely pass 110, through air so dry your sweat vanishes before you feel it, which means your body's cooling system is failing invisibly. Rim to river and back in a day is the challenge that calls to exactly the people least likely to respect it. Marathoners, soldiers, athletes, the young and strong, and the environmental fatality files are full of them, because fitness accelerates the attempt without repealing the physics. The park's own warning signs say, in several languages, that hiking to the river and back in one day is attempting something that kills people, and every June the case files grow anyway. In one recent 21-day stretch, 3 hikers died of suspected heat illness. Dr. Myers, who has treated the canyon's casualties for 34 years, adds the quieter corollary: the heat and the altitude do not only kill the reckless, they unmask the vulnerable, turning an undiagnosed heart condition into a collapse on the switchbacks, which is why plain medical events on trails now lead the park's cause of death lists. The canyon is, among its other identities, the world's most beautiful cardiac stress test, administered without consent. Then there is the water, and the water kills with a paradox at each end. In the desert-side canyons, creeks like Havasu can transform in minutes from turquoise idol to churning flash flood, fed by storms so distant the victims never saw a cloud, a mechanism this landscape has used on travelers for as long as travelers have existed. And the Colorado River itself, the thing exhausted hikers fantasize about plunging into, emerges from the depths of Glen Canyon Dam at around 50 degrees, cold enough to shock swimmers into drowning in July, while its rapids, Crystal, Lava, Horn Creek, have been collecting boaters since the wooden dory era. The river's most famous case remains its most haunting. In 1928, honeymooners Glenn and Bessie Hyde ran the canyon in a homemade scow, aiming for fame, Bessie poised to become the first woman through. Their boat was found floating upright and fully loaded, mile 237, lunch supplies intact, and the couple was never seen again, a vanishing that has fed a century of theories and confessions and resolved into nothing. Before them, in 1869, 3 men of John Wesley Powell's first expedition, exhausted and starving, climbed out of the gorge at what is now Separation Canyon rather than run one more rapid, and walked into the desert, and disappeared from history 2 days before the expedition reached safety, the canyon establishing early that it offers no refunds on judgment calls. And the ledger holds stranger pages still. 39 murders, bodies brought to the rim rather than taken by it, deaths by lightning on exposed points. The 1993 pair who parachuted into the Little Colorado Gorge standing so close together their chutes tangled. One killed, one somehow alive. And, for the anxious, one genuinely comforting entry, the mules. In more than a century of famously terrifying mule rides down the Bright Angel Trail, on a path where riders stare straight down from the saddle, no passenger has ever been killed by a fall from a mule on those trail rides, a safety record achieved by animals who are, unlike a reliable percentage of visitors, incapable of overestimating themselves. The mule does not shortcut. The mule does not pose. The mule has been commuting past the drop-off since the 1890s with a perfect grasp of the assignment, and there is a lesson standing there on 4 legs if anyone wants it. So here is how to visit the Grand Canyon knowing all of this. Because the purpose of the ledger, as its authors insist, was never to frighten anyone away. The canyon, with 5 million annual visitors and a dozen deaths a year, is, statistically, a sanctuary compared to the highways that deliver people to it. The purpose is to aim your fear at the right targets. Stay behind the railings, not because the rim is a killer, it barely is, but because the exceptions are all photographs that were not worth it. If you hike down, treat the descent as a loan document. Start at dawn, carry more water than seems reasonable, and the salty food and electrolytes that let your body use it. Rest through the furnace hours in shade the way the Rangers and the Bighorn do, and accept that the river is a 2-day destination in summer, no matter what your training log says. Never shortcut. Never scramble alone at dusk. Check the weather in canyons you cannot see out of. And if you are older, or carrying a heart you have not had checked lately, let the canyon come to you at the overlooks, where it is exactly as magnificent and considerably less interrogative. Then, with the fear filed correctly, give the place what it is actually offering. Stand at the rim at first light, when the buttes emerge one by one out of blue shadow and the river is a thread of hammered silver a mile below, and understand what you are looking at. Nearly 2 billion years of the Earth's autobiography stacked in stone, a gorge that was already ancient when the first humans reached it, that swallowed conquistadors' ambitions and prospectors' fortunes, and 2 airliners and a honeymoon, and that will outlast every safety railing ever bolted to it. Somewhere out in that immensity, on 2 remote buttes near the river's junction, the wreckage of the 1956 collision still lies where it fell, protected now as a National Historic Landmark, the only one in America commemorating an event in the sky, slowly becoming one more layer in the strata. The canyon absorbed it the way it absorbs everything, without malice and without notice, and went on doing the only thing it has ever done, which is to stand there, vast and patient and neutral, while nearly 5 million people a year walk to its edge, feel their hearts lurch at the wrong danger, and step back from the one thing here that was never really trying to kill them.